What's going on, guys? It's your boy Hyga, and today I'm going to share my main build for PvE content in New World. As you can tell by the title, I am a tank. I don't claim to be the #1 tank or anything like that, but I have been playing tank for about 1,500 hours, so I'd like to think that I have enough experience to share what I use, and maybe it can help some of the other people who aren't sure about tanking. Maybe they're trying it out, they're not sure what abilities to use, so I'm here to share my input. The sword and shield have some very good passives available to grab, but unfortunately, we're only allowed 19 mastery points. So we got to work with what we got. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the skill tree. The first passive I'm going to be grabbing is Empowered Stab. Successful heavy attacks grant you 30% empower for 5 seconds. As a tank, we're fighting lots of enemies that have stamina bars, and what do you do when they have a stamina bar? You want a heavy attack to get that down. So we're constantly heavy attacking on those enemies. There's also some enemies that are weak to thrust, like Corrupted. So getting these free heavies in for extra damage, also giving the empower, 30% empower is a lot, and 5 seconds gives you quite a bit of time to get some hits in. So this is just a no-brainer. No matter what build you're using, I think this is a very good passive to have. Next up, I'm grabbing Achilles Heel. The final attack in your light attack chain inflicts a 20% slow for 2 seconds. 2 seconds may not seem like a lot of time, but the sword's light attacks are actually pretty rapid. And when you incorporate that with the occasional heavies to make sure you keep that empower up and you're constantly light attacking, you get that slow off quite frequently, and paired with some of the other passives, you're getting a good bit of extra damage in. After that, we're grabbing Precision, which is obviously just like Keen, plus 10% crit chance on all of your sword and shield attacks. Next up, I grabbed Counterattack. When you block an attack, gain a stack of 3% empower for 5 seconds. So once you block 5 attacks, you get that 15% empower. So the more you're getting hit, and then counterattacking with those light hits or those heavy hits back, it's just little extra damage pieces here and there. We're having aggro a lot of the time. We don't have all that much free time to be attacking. So, when we do get it, boom, extra 15% empower. Next up, I'm grabbing Opportunist. Deal 10% more damage to slowed foes, which obviously, now that I've said it, you're thinking, oh, that goes well with Achilles Heel. Those light attacks slowing the enemies. With Opportunist, I'm getting 10% extra damage on slowed enemies, and obviously this also works well if you're using a hammer, if there is someone with an ice gauntlet, or any type of thing that could slow enemies down. Obviously, this is going to help you out, pump just a little bit more. Next up, we're grabbing Confidence. While your health is full, you're dealing 15% more damage. Obviously, as a tank, you are receiving all of the healing because you are also receiving most of the damage. You want to keep aggro on you as much as you can, so the healers are going to be doing all they can to put Sacreds on you, Orb of Protection, Beacons, Light's Embrace, all that good stuff to make sure you're topped off on HP, because as long as the tank is alive, the rest of the team is alive. So even though you're getting hit a lot, you're also at full health a lot. Staggering those enemies, you get full HP, it's just boom, extra 15% damage. Like I said, you got to take the damage where you can get it. As far as passives on the Swordmaster tree, one of the last ones we're getting is Critical Precision. On crit, gain 20% haste for 5 seconds. Obviously, haste increases movement speed. You could argue getting mobility instead. Mobility is specifically 33% more haste when blocking, but if I crit, I get 20% more haste while blocking or not blocking, which can be really nice for chasing an enemy down, running away from an enemy, maybe a bit more PvP friendly, but could also help out if you're using something like Accelerated Defiant Stance to catch up to enemies that are chasing your DPS or chasing your healers or whatever it is. Unfortunately, I do need to put 11 points into the Swordmaster tree in total because I run Leadership. So with the other 3 points that I'm using, I'm running Reverse Stab. The first passive under it makes Reverse Stab have grit, and then the second passive was what really makes Reverse Stab shine. On a successful hit with Reverse Stab, all sword cooldowns are reduced by 25%. What this passive fails to mention is that it's reduced cooldowns by 25% per enemy hit. Obviously, as a tank, you got lots of enemies on you. You hit one reverse stab, boom, you hit 4 or more enemies, all your cooldowns are reset 100%. Doesn't matter how long it is, 100% reduced cooldown if you hit more than 4 enemies. 3 enemies, 75%, right? As you can see, this is very helpful. Some of the sword's cooldowns are very long, so having this is very helpful. It also has like a little bit of a stagger when you hit enemies with it, which I like, and it also counts as thrust damage as opposed to the standard slash that the sword provides. So having heavy attacks that are thrust, reverse stab that are thrust, gives you a bit more versatility when you're attacking enemies like Corrupted, who are weak to thrust, but you also have that good slash damage for like Angry Earth, who are weak to slash. It can also help out against things like Ancients and Lazarus, who are resistant to slash but neutral to thrust, right? Now, the reason I have all those passives and reverse stab is because I am running Leadership. While holding a sword, the damage of all group members is increased by 10%. This does include you, the tank, your 3 DPS, and your healer, or whatever composition you're running, whatever you're working on. Everyone in your group gets 10% increased damage. You can see why I grabbed that. I like this way more in PvE than defensive formation. I think for wars, defensive formation may get a bit more value, but for the sake of me tanking in dungeons, mutations, invasions, all that good stuff, elite runs, leadership is for sure the way to go. Now with leadership applied, we have 11 mastery points already consumed, which means we are only allowed 8 more. So to start off on the defender tree, I use shield rush. I don't grab any of the passives under it, so you may be thinking, why am I grabbing that? Main reason I use this is because I have a perk on my armor, fortifying shield rush. When shield rush connects, you get 19% fortify for 4 seconds, which does give me a lot of value out of this ability. We'll get more into that later once we get onto the armor, but that is why I use it. For my passives, I'm running sturdy shield, 15% additional physical armor, elemental resistance, reduced damage from all magical types by 10%. On the other side, we have sturdy grip, stamina damage is reduced by 15% when blocking a melee attack. After that, we have defensive training. When you block an attack, gain 10% fortify for 5 seconds. One thing I like about this ability is it has no cooldown, so every time you get hit on your shield, boom, 10% fortify. It also stacks well with counterattack, so when you're blocking attacks, not only do you get empower, you also get fortify. So when you go back on the offensive and you start swinging your sword, you have that extra fortify in case you do receive hits. Next, we grab Defiant Stance. For anyone who's tanking, you know Defiant Stance is a must. It's an 8-meter taunt, 6 seconds. It is the technically second best AoE taunt in the game behind the hatchet, and the passive is really cool too. For 8 seconds, reduce the incoming base damage from attackers by 30%. If I'm being completely honest, I wish I didn't have to use this ability. The construction and execution of this ability is actually horrible. I die so much trying to use it. If you've never used it, it's about a 2 to 3 second activation time, and for the first half of the activation, you're vulnerable. You don't have your shield up because you're activating the ability, and the buff isn't applied until you finish. Because of what I explained earlier, I don't use Final Countdown. A lot of times when I use Defiant Stance, because it has such a long activation time and because I'm vulnerable, my stamina also regenerates while I'm casting it, which means after Defiant Stance is successfully casted, my stamina bar is full. If my stamina bar is full, I have my shield up. If my shield is up, I'm not actually taking damage, and I usually transition into switching my weapon into a stun with my hammer, which means this buff is just kind of pointless. I'm gonna die or I'm not gonna die. This isn't gonna help me, which is why I just stopped using it. I used to use it, so because of that, instead I use Final Blow. The third attack in your light attack chain deals 15% more damage and causes more threat. I don't know how much more threat, but extra threat is always nice as a tank. And then 15% more damage on your final light attack. And the final passive we're going to be using is Recuperation. All incoming healing and regen is increased by 10%. It's a no-brainer why that's good. This works for health pots, regen pots, if someone is healing you with a Void Gauntlet, someone healing you with a Life Staff, however you're getting heals. If you eat food, and that regen will also be increased. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and show the gear I'm using as well as some of the perks I look for when I'm playing. I mainly prefer using the sword and shield in pairing with the hammer. I'm going to put a quick screenshot up of my hammer build. However, I'm not going to go too far in describing why I use what I use on the hammer. I really don't use it for anything too much aside from throwing a Path of Destiny out there, using a shockwave, or applying the Rend with Armor Breaker. And you could definitely switch up what you want to use on it. This is just what I use and what I like using, but my main build is behind the sword and shield. But onto my armor, as far as some of the perks that I'm looking for. One that I recently started using is Contagious Reverse Stab. Reverse Stab transfers an active debuff from self-target to hit. This is why I don't use Freeing Justice, which is the passive that removes debuffs when you heavy attack. I have that already on my reverse stab, so I don't want to use an extra mastery point there. I could, if I wanted to make sure a bunch of debuffs were getting removed, right heavy attack into a reverse stab to remove 2 debuffs. However, the only time I get debuffed that many times is in PvP, but it's still very nice to have. If there's a burn on you, if there's a rend on you, weaken, anything like that, you can put it on the enemy in front of you. I also use Fortifying Shield Rush as I described earlier. After hitting a target with Shield Rush, gain Fortify, increasing damage absorption on self by 19% for 4 seconds. 19% is a lot of damage absorption. If you are tanking, I 110% recommend using this. I love the ability. The amount of sustain it provides is so nice, especially because I don't go as much con anymore. I'm definitely more of an offensive, trying to help my team do damage and speed everything up. For my other perks, I do have a piece with leeching Path of Destiny. I like having Path of Destiny on my hammer because it gives me a bit of range when I'm trying to pull an enemy, maybe stagger an enemy that's chasing one of my DPS or my healer, or if I want to draw aggro on an enemy that is, you know, kind of sitting idle and hasn't been pulled yet. It gives me that extra distance that I don't get out of any other ability. Having leeching on it really just gives me me a lot of health back if I'm getting low and there's a lot of enemies in front of me. The last perk I'm using is Sundering Shockwave. Sundering Shockwave has been great since the game launched. Shockwave applies rend, reducing target damage absorption by 9.5% for 10 seconds. I love using Shockwave because I don't use Shield Bash anymore, so I don't have an actual stun. Obviously, Reverse Step has a little stagger, Shield Rush has a little stagger, but with stuns in this game, it'll literally override everything. If they're in the middle of an ability, if their ability has grit, you can knock them out of it with a stun, and that's what Shockwave provides. So it provides me a stun, and then with this perk, I also get a rend. There's also a passive that makes it apply a weaken as well, so you get a rend, a stun, and a weaken all in one ability. It's an AoE 4-meter ability, which is awesome for when things get hectic. My chest piece could probably improve, but I pretty much just use it for refreshing. I have luck on it as well, just because I'm always doing PvE content. Why not have some luck? But it definitely could improve. I don't use diminishing orb, obviously. For my amulet, I'm using a health divine full con onyx piece. I mainly have physical armor rating on my armor as well. In order to compensate for my armor rating, I have opals in all of my pieces to help give me that elemental damage absorption to go and pair with the difference between my physical and elemental armor rating. I also have flame protection on my necklace, which is helpful for mutations or if you're fighting a Thorp. My ring is a pretty all-around good ring, hardy, keen, and luck. If you have the opportunity to try hardy on a tank build, it's amazing. Having that extra 10 stamina, I did not think it would make as much of a difference as it does, but it gives you an extra dodge if you need it, so it's very, very nice to have. For my earring, I'm using legendary Doom's Chance, refreshing, toast, and regenerating. Regenerating is very, very awesome to have. Keeps giving you that health regen while you're blocking, which helps out with your overall sustain. On the PTR, I had an earring that rolled with Nimble, and Nimble is also really, really good if you can get that on a tank earring. I think ideally I would probably want refreshing, regenerating, and Nimble. Maybe like Despised, Nimble, and regenerating would probably be like best in slot or something like that. For my sword, I have 15 strength, refreshing move, trenchant rend, and angry earthbane. This is pretty much a best in slot sword for Genesis. Trenchant Rend and Refreshing Move are two of the best perks that you can have on a sword. Since the sword can't apply Rend normally, it can only apply Rend with Whirling Blade, and it's like a 5% Rend. Being able to apply it with my heavy attacks, it's 14% Rend for 7 seconds. It does have a cooldown, but that's fine. It should. This allows me to do a fully charged heavy attack, apply a Rend, I get 30% in power, and then after that, I'm just dogging on the enemies. I'm just hitting and pumping damage. It's very, very nice. I think ideally I would replace Angry Earthbane with like maybe Refreshing or Keenly Fortified or something like that that was more universal, so I could use it for every dungeon and not feel bad, but I still use this for Lazarus and Dynasty or whatever, and it is still very, very, very good. I just rolled this shield today and I got Sturdy, Refreshing, and Slash Shield Ward. The one thing that sucks is because I'm using the winter schematic, I couldn't roll one set attribute. I tried doing that, but I wasn't getting Sturdy, and I 100% need Sturdy. So I did get Con Strength. I'm missing out on 2 attribute points because of that. But getting anything with Sturdy, Refreshing, Hated, or Sturdy, Slash Shield, or Strike Shield Ward, or anything like that, I 100% recommend having Sturdy on your shield, on your tower shield though. And the final piece for my armor set is the legendary Fury. You get this from Lazarus, the final boss, Keen, Vicious, and Keenly Empowered. I also have a legendary Woods Warden, which is the same thing, but instead of Keenly Empowered, it's Keenly Fortified, which I think would probably be better for PvP, but I don't use my hammer for defenses, right? I have a sword and a shield for that. So when I pull out my hammer, it's because the enemy is below 30% health and I'm going to be heavy attacking constantly, or I'm stunning them. I'm getting those heavy attacks off, Leeching Path of Destiny. All of that stuff is just damage based stuff or stuns, right? I'm not really using it for defenses, which is why I prefer having Keenly Empowered. I can hit upwards towards 6k with it with my current build, which is kind of absurd for me to be a tank, you know? Assuming I don't roll anything else, I'm pretty sure this is the exact set that I'm going to be using. These exact skill trees, these weapons, this armor when mutations begin. I imagine this will probably get me up to like mutation level 5 or 6 just fine. And then once we start getting the armor from the mutations, we can start talking about if I'm changing anything. Now, the last thing regarding my build is how I set up my attributes. Because my shield sacrifices 2 attribute points because it's con and strength, it's 9 and 4, which is obviously 13, but if it was 600, it'd be 10 and 5, would be 15. Because of that, I am short 1 strength. Ideally, while your sword is out, you can get up to 250 strength, which helps with the stamina regen, but it's really not that serious. It's kind of like Nimble, but I'm not gonna like miss out on it too much. Plus, most of the time, I'm gonna have a carrot cake popped, which will give me the strength that I need. And then obviously this is with my sword out. With my sword away, I'm rocking 200 con, 245 strength is my base setup. When I had first got to level 60, I was running about 300 con, 150 strength or 140 strength. Having that much con is nice and all that health is cool and all, but it's really not necessary. I'm thinking for mutations, once we get into higher tier mutations, maybe I'll have to go a bit more con, but I tried on the PTR and running this setup worked pretty much fine. All the fortify I give myself gives me enough sustain, and with a healer who's using orb of protection to apply a fortify as well is just, I think I'll be fine. Worst comes to worst, I'll go a bit more con, but I do want to make sure I can help my team pump out some damage. But that's about it for my build. All of the clips that I had playing throughout the video were from my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Hyga. So if you're into Twitch or want to check me out and support me there, I am there most of my time. I'm definitely spending more time on Twitch than YouTube. The link will be in the description. If you have any questions or concerns about the build, want me to go more in depth on something, or something I maybe explained poorly, you want more elaboration on, just let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to rate the video, and you don't have to subscribe, but I'm going to be trying to put out more New World content, so if you'd like to see some, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, it's been your boy Hyga. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see y'all later.